Welcome into Bucs Insider, presented by Verizon. Casey Phillips, senior writer and editor Scott Smith, and boy, what a week we've had. I don't know that I've been this excited for one of these shows in a minute, because there is a lot to talk about, and it is just some of my favorite things we could possibly
It was just one after another.
Over and over.
By the way, I was out of town for that week.
Yeah, we need you to leave more often.
I'm not, this is not a joke. Every time I leave town, we sign people.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just karmically the one getting in the way when I'm here.
That's true. Or maybe having a birthday the week before free agency is the problem.
Well, in any case, as soon as I left town, everything started to happen, which I was happy for.
And also, we will say belated happy birthday to you as well, because we didn't have a show since you were gone. So now we wanted to say belated happy birthday. So let's start with all the different pieces of news. We're going to go a little bit chronologically for everybody here. So first and foremost, Mike Evans is back. My favorite sentence possible to say. So let's first of all just take a look at this preview video we put out right before he signed.
Could you sum up what you're bringing to this football team?
Mike Evans. I'm going to do anything it takes to win. I'm going to go up and get the 50-50 balls. I'm going to be a great teammate. And I'll try to bring leadership.
My favorite part is seeing little baby face Mike all the way back. That's how you know how long he's played here. He looks like a totally different person since he first signed. So tell me just some of the initial reaction for you about the idea that he's able to come back.
Well, I think it's what everybody wanted, from the team to Mike to pretty much every single Buccaneer fan you're ever going to meet. The idea, hopefully, is for Mike to be a Buck for life. And he's already the most accomplished offensive player in franchise history, probably one of the top 5 players overall in franchise history, almost certainly bound for the Hall of Fame. All of this would have been true, and we would have been happy for him had he finished his career somewhere else, but this is so much better. And we're talking about a guy who last year in his 10th season played like he was in his 5th season, and the way he takes care of himself, the way every year he goes in the offseason, he was saying it at his press conference, I can be in better shape. And he's been talking in the last few years, going into the seasons, like, I'm in better shape now than I was earlier in my career, and that continues to be a commitment for him. And that's why I think, this concern that a guy's going to fall off the table in his 11th, 12th, 13th year or whatever, I'm not too worried about that with Mike. I think we have several really, really big years ahead.
Yeah, I love that you brought up that he's meant so much to this team, not only on the field but off of it, that I think that's a big part of what the loyalty from Bucs fans has been towards him as well. Is that, one, is it super fun to watch him? Absolutely. Has he produced consistently every year, no matter who the quarterback is or what else is happening? Yes. But also, he gives so much back to the community, has become such a huge part of Tampa Bay, and everyone has such fond feelings towards him.
As well they should.
And it was really cool to hear Mike actually talked about this a little bit in his press conference, of just the feelings he's gotten from the Tampa Bay fans, his feelings towards Tampa as well. So let's go ahead and listen to that.
That's how Tampa has always been towards me and my family, so that's why this is home. They've always showed me love, even when I'm not playing well. They always have my back, and it drives me and motivates me to, try to be a better player and a better man.
It's just so cool. I mean, I can't think of too many other players across the league that I think are probably more beloved by their team, by their community, that what he means inside the locker room, and especially at that position where everyone just talks about he is so unselfish. He is such a good example for young receivers coming in of what this looks like. And I just think, if you're going to reward any kind of player, this is the kind of player you want to reward when they've been everything you could want on and off the field.
Yeah, and he made a life and a family here in Tampa. And from what I heard from the press conference, maybe if he was having a hard time figuring out what exactly he wanted to do, his wife might have had a few well-timed comments.
Yeah, shout out to Ashley Evans for being the real MVP here, and maybe giving a little nudge towards Mike, saying, hey, we gotta stay here. We gotta stay in Tampa Bay. And look, she is smart and Mike is smart to listen to her. I think it was a great choice.
I also feel like Mike, you said so much about what he's meant to this community and what he does for everybody. I feel like he does that in a way that he's not really searching out the spotlight.
He definitely is not, to the point where it's very infuriating for all of us who want to highlight it and showcase it. And actually, I'll tell this story that, my husband works in the nonprofit world, and he was down doing something in Houston. He was doing something at an elementary school, and then it's like they have a food pantry there, and he's like, telling me, he calls me and he's like, I found out that Mike is like donating to this food pantry.
Of course.
Like, of course he is. Of course we'd never heard of this, and of course we wouldn't have heard of it if it weren't for that. So I just think it's an incredible thing, and there was just reactions all over the place from everybody being so excited about this. And it would have been so sad to see him in another jersey, and now we don't have to, which is wonderful. And then the news just kept coming that was so positive. So
think it was the very next day.
Winfield Jr., tell us the situation with Antoine.
It's not unexpected. The Buccaneers used the franchise tag on Antoine Winfield Jr. They waited until pretty much the last minute to do so, just in case something could get done. And what I think people need to remember is that when a guy gets a tag, that doesn't mean the negotiations for a long-term deal are over. It just means that the Buccaneers can extend basically their exclusive negotiating rights with him longer, so they can give themselves longer to make that deal a long-term deal. And that has happened with most of the guys that the Bucs have franchise tagged in the past. We looked at that graphic a couple weeks ago. For most of them, at some point, maybe not this year, but hopefully this year, maybe the next year, a long-term deal comes. But the Bucs just could not let Antoine Winfield get out of the building. He was probably the best safety in all of football last year, and he's still on, he's only played 4 years.
Yeah, it's
he's
crazy.
still on the way up. We were kind of talking afterwards. What I noticed was that at the exact moment the Buccaneers were putting a pretty big investment into the safety position, if you looked around the league at all the other moves, it was like teams were letting go of veteran safeties left and right. But I think the difference here is I don't really think you want to pigeonhole Antoine as just a safety. To me, he's a playmaker. He last year at least he was the biggest playmaker on the Bucs defense.
Yeah,
and
perfect example that
exactly.
was showing right there.
And you need that. So I don't care what position you call him. That guy's worth keeping around.
Yep, I completely agree with that. And then, of course, on to our next piece of news, which I'm sure closely following the Mike Evans signing was not a coincidence.
Right.
That Baker Mayfield staying a Buck as well, and to know that we're going to get to hear Gene Deckerhoff yell again, Baker Mayfield to Mike Evans, fire the cannons, is just going to be so wonderful. And you can see all the teammates were very excited about the idea of signing Baker Mayfield. So tell
That's
me,
the one I liked.
Yeah, Jason, just yes. So tell me, in your mind, how the Bucs were able to get all of this done, and what this means, knowing that all three of those guys are guaranteed to be in Bucs uniforms.
Well, you mentioned Baker and Mike, and they both said they wanted to keep playing with each other. I have no inside information, but I got to believe they were talking to each other.
Yeah.
And like, hey, we're getting close. Are you getting close? And maybe Mike went first. So you think Mike probably felt pretty confident that the Baker thing was going to happen. Now, we should say so far it's agreed to terms.
Right.
But that's pretty much usually means
Yes.
it's done. Baker hasn't officially signed it, haven't had the press conference yet, but we're very excited that he's back. I think, we've been through this a lot, both here and in written materials. It's kind of team policy not to get into the weeds on the actual numbers of the salaries. Yeah. So I'm not going to really throw those out there, but if you've been following this all, you've seen them. To me, it's a deal that really is a nice guaranteed amount of money for Baker. And then it's structured in a way that I think it's almost certain that it's at least 2 more years, and if those 2 years go well, the third year is at a number that is good for both the team and the player, especially because that's a couple of years later, so the salary cap will have gone up. If he's done well the last 2 years, you're going to want to keep him for what that third-year contract is. Plus, there's some incentives for him there. Now, Baker, it's a big deal when he went from what he signed, that 1-year deal for, let's just say, $4 million for last season. People like to throw out, and I've done it myself, it's a prove it deal. It's let's play this one and earn the next one. And that's true, but what strikes me about this, and Jason Light has said it on several occasions, early in the period when the Buccaneers were moving, Tom Brady retired and they were looking for a veteran quarterback to compete for their starting job, they targeted Baker early, partially because Todd Bowles really liked him from the 2018 draft, but also Baker, with his agent, decided the Buccaneers was where he wanted to go. That was his number one target. That's where he's get me there. And he's prove a contract, right? Well, who knows what was out there for him? Was there something more lucrative out there for him? But what he did have some control over was, where can I go to rejuvenate my career, to turn this thing around? And he picked the right place.
Yep.
And so did the Bucs, and the results were fantastic.
That's great. Well, of course, those were obviously the big headline-grabbing pieces of news. There are other things happening right now as well that we wanted to keep you up to date on. So tell me what we learned about Devin Tompkins and Brandon Walton.
Yeah, a couple little pieces of business got done. Devin Tompkins and Brandon Walton would have been exclusive rights free agents because they have 2 or fewer years of free agency credit, and they had expiring contracts. And so all the Bucs had to do was put a qualifying offer on them before the start of free agency, and then they would have not been able to negotiate with anybody else, and they eventually would have signed those deals and had a 1-year deal. But Mike Greenberg has been doing the last couple of years is just like, why go through this process? Let's
Yeah.
just sign them to a new one-year deal.
Yep.
So don't bother with the tag and the offer and all that. Just, hey, here's a new one-year deal. So it's good. Those guys have been valuable role players. Brandon didn't get to play a whole lot this past year because there weren't a lot of injuries on the whole line, which is great. Devin Tompkins obviously was your return man for the whole year. So it's good to have those guys back. There's a couple of more little pieces of business like that have to be taken care of.
Yeah, and you mentioned the negotiating period, that we're at this time where there's a lot of different terms thrown out in terms of what free agency actually means and the different stages of it and who can talk to who when. So where are we at right now in terms of what teams are allowed to do, who they can talk to, who they can sign?
So the free agency period technically begins Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And it's funny because you'll see some deals come across at 4:30. And you're like, wow, that was fast.
They were very efficient with that.
Yeah, that used to be like but now it's kind of legalized. So beginning on Monday, today, at noon, and through that, right 1 minute before that, or 1 second actually, they actually write 3:59 in the NFL notes, but the representative of players who are pending free agents can talk to representatives of the team, and they can even start negotiating on deals. So you can get, basically it's the de facto start of free agency. So and you're going to start seeing pieces of news released before even the start of free agency, like this team is closing in on a deal with that player and so on. Considering our Bucs salary cap situation and some comments made from Jason Light, and obviously this early emphasis on getting our own guys back in the fold, I don't think the Bucs are going to be hugely
maybe not big splash things.
Which was the same thing last year, which is why the Buccaneers ended up with a compensatory draft pick, which I think we were going to talk about.
So tell us a little bit about what we learned about now, the true finalized list of draft picks the Bucs will have.
So the Bucs were one of the 14 teams that received a compensatory pick. It's the last pick of the 6th round, number 220 overall. The way that this works is, first of all, you have to, if we could go back to that past graphic, you have to have a net loss of free agents to qualify for a pick. It doesn't matter who they are, but as you can see here for us, the ones that qualified, some guys sign later and don't qualify, but the ones that fit into the system, you added Greg Gaines and Baker Mayfield, and you lost Mike Edwards, Sean Murphy-Bunting, and Raheem Nunez-Roches, so that's 3 over 2, right? And then the value of what those players did in terms of like postseason awards, the salary they got, the playing time they got, that factors into the system to see where your pick is. And for the Bucs, it ended up being the 6th, which is nice. Yeah. It's a pick. There was no certainty about a month ago that they were even going to get a comp pick, so they did. As you can see now, all our picks, now that all those picks, there were 34 of them total, all those picks added into the overall draft order means the Bucs now know exactly where all their picks are, and it's right there. So 26, 57, 89, 3 of the first 89 picks. Not bad when you were in the playoffs last year. So that's where we're starting right now, 7 picks.
It's going to be interesting. All right, well, that is going to do it for us on this very busy edition of Bucs Insider presented by Verizon. Again, stay tuned to Buccaneers.com for all the coverage of this free agency period to see what else the Bucs are going to do. We'll see you next time.